sports leader, Sports Radio 66. The Fan, WFAN, New York.
Welcome to Second Take on WFAN Radio. I'm your host, Steven McAvoy, letting you know that T-Mobile keeps you connected to what you love. Explore plans, benefits, deals, and a stronger network that's paving the way for a 5G future. T-Mobile, life is for sharing. Just a few days ago, the Washington Nationals took home their first World Series title, defeating the Astros in 7 games in this year's Fall Classic. It was certainly a historic one, as for the first time in over 1,400 championship matchups across the MLB, NFL, NBA, and NHL, did a road team win every single road contest. The Nationals took Game 1 5-4, largely in part to Juan Soto's 3-for-4 performance with 3 RBIs. Game 2 was kept ever so close until the 7th, when the Astros bullpen gave up a 7 spot to the Nationals bats, blowing the door open for Washington to leave Houston up 2-0. As the series shifted over to DC, however, the Astros bats came alive as the Astros outscored the Nationals 19-3 in games 3, 4, and 5, which would send the series back to Houston with the Astros up 3-2. In Houston, the Nationals took out the reigning champions, winning games 6 and 7 with finals of 7-2 and 6-2 respectively, with strong performances by aces Steven Strasburg and Max Scherzer, who finished the postseason a perfect 10-0 when either man was on the bump. To break down how the Nationals managed to take this one home, Dan Bahl joins us live from Houston. Dan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Steve. And what a magical run it was for this year's Washington Nationals team. Their first title and their first pennant in franchise history. Now, keep in mind, this team has been in existence since 1969 when the Montreal Expos first came into existence. But when you take a look at this Nationals team, it is pretty ironic that they got here in the first place. They lose their superstar Bryce Harper to free agency over the offseason, and when he held his first press conference as a member of the Philadelphia Phillies, he accidentally said that he was excited to bring a title back to Washington, D.C. Now, he didn't do that directly, but him leaving opened the door for some younger players like Juan Soto, who was one of the best players in the entire playoffs, let alone the World Series. He was fantastic, and it ended up being a mix of young and old, with Soto and guys like Ryan Zimmerman and Howie Kendrick both getting it done. And when you look at the top 4 in batting average on that Washington Nationals team, it was 2 old guys and 2 young guys coming in at the top 4. So it was a mix of young and old that really got it done. And for the Nationals, you can see not only is their present fantastic right now, but their future is pretty darn bright.
So as you were saying, the loss of Bryce Harper was obviously very immense, and both well-known players and very lesser-known players managed to step up when they were needed the most. But who was the biggest catalyst to the National success?
Well, I mean, there are a number of players that come to mind when you think about the number one catalyst that really got things going. But I'm going to stick with my young gun, Juan Soto. He turned 21 years old during the World Series, so we'd like to think that he had his first ever drink when he was sipping champagne after the Nationals won the World Series. But 2 home runs in back-to-back games and games 5 and 6 of the World Series. It seemed like every time that he stepped to the plate, he was getting something done at just the right time. And from a pitching perspective, Steven Strasburg, the man, he was drafted number 1 overall by Washington, and it seemed for years and years like, is this guy going to be a bust? It really never seemed like he was going to turn out to be what Nationals fans were expecting. But when the lights were shining bright as Strasburg came through in the clutch, he was somebody that they needed to rely on. He was absolutely lights out in game number 6 of the World Series, and he's going to get a big payday when all is said and done.
So speaking of Steven Strasburg, his agent Scott Boras announced today that he will opt out of his current deal, officially putting him on the market. Alongside him is all-star third baseman Anthony Rendon. So with the current debate being whether or not the Nationals can afford both of them, if they're unable to, who is the more important asset? Is it Rendon or is it Strasburg?
You know, Steve, I really love what Anthony Rendon has been doing with the Nationals. I mean, he's a fantastic player. He had over 100 RBIs this year in their lineup. But I think the answer to this question has to be Steven Strasburg, because when you look up and down that rotation, yes, you just signed Patrick Corbin, but Max Scherzer isn't getting any younger. He's already in his mid-30s. He's coming up towards the end of that big deal, and you could see in the middle of the World Series, the injury bug started to catch up with him. So if that starts to become more of a persistent issue, you need to know that you have a guy at the top of the rotation. Those top of the rotation arms are so hard to find. So I think if I was going to pick one guy that I would really try to lock up and build behind, you know that you have Juan Soto in the outfield. You know that you have Trey Turner in the infield as two of your offensive catalysts. So I think Strasburg has to be the number one guy.
Awesome, Dan. Thank you so much for your time. Joining me now in studio is Astros beat reporter for The Athletic, Logan Reardon. Now, Logan, what is your biggest takeaway from the series in regards to the Houston Astros?
Well, the 2019 season is going to go down as a big missed opportunity for the Houston Astros organization as a whole. You look at the core that they have right now, extremely talented, mostly young outside of the starting pitching. They've got guys on cheap, inexpensive deals at this time, and going forward they're going to have to start paying these guys, and Bregman and Altuve have gotten their deals. Bregman's hasn't kicked in yet, but you look at other guys. Michael Brantley they got for cheap. He's going to want a new deal after next season. Garrett Cole obviously is a free agent. Verlander's got 2 years left. He's getting up there in age. It's going to be interesting to see how they assess that contract situation. And then Carlos Correa, George Springer, Roberto Osuna, all up for arbitration one more year, and then probably free agents after that. So you don't really know where they're going to go from here with key guys like that up on the market, and guys that it's going to be tough to win without those guys if they're gone.
The biggest question mark is definitely Garrett Cole. The ace was absolutely phenomenal in the postseason, as well as the regular season, broke the strikeouts record. So with Garrett Cole set to hit the market and teams like the Yankees vying for another ace, how do the Astros rebound from such a huge contributor?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because we basically know that he's gone, even though free agency hasn't even started yet. I mean, after Game 7, he immediately says, "I'm not a team employee, but I'll speak on behalf of myself." He's wearing a Scott Boras company hat on his head and not an Astros hat. Scott Boras, of course, agent for high-profile guys, Alex Rodriguez, Barry Bonds, Bryce Harper, all these guys who've gotten monster deals. So you can just tell that that's what he's looking for. And the Astros, as I mentioned, have all these young hitters and people like that who need to get paid also. So it looks like they're going to be leaning towards not paying him, and especially the way Game 7 went down when they didn't use him in a spot where it looked like he clearly should have been used. And it's going to be tough for them to bounce back without him. But they did address that this year at the trade deadline. They got Zach Greinke at the deadline, hoping that he can kind of fill in and be that 1A, 1B to Justin Verlander. But not having the three-headed monster is going to be a completely different story. And to not win a World Series this season where your window is always closing in baseball, it seems like teams are never really consistently winning like dynasties. So it's going to be tough for them.
So as we were saying, the majority of the young talent are set to hit the market between now and 2022. Do you see the Astros making a new run next year, or is the dynasty essentially dead?
Well, it's tough to call it a dynasty when you only got one World Series, but two appearances in 3 years, they were getting there if they had won it this year. I think they've got another run or two in them with this current core going forward. I mean, you've got Altuve and Bregman under contract long term. Having those two guys like spearheading your lineup is always going to be a lineup to be reckoned with. Verlander still looks great. Greinke's going to be good in the regular season. No Cole, though, and especially if Cole goes to the division rival Angels, they pick up Garrett Cole, they add Joe Madden as their manager, still have Mike Trout doing Mike Trout things seemingly every single year. He's just a machine. The Angels could be a threat in the AL West, so it's definitely not going to be as easy as it has been. Also, the Athletics have been good for the past couple years making the wild card game, so things aren't going to get easier, but I think they still have an opportunity the next couple years, maybe 2-3 years tops with this current core before they're going to either have to make some cuts, make some decisions, or start bringing in different types of talent.
Awesome, Logan. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We are going to take a quick pause, but next we will break down the first week of the NBA season with NBA writer Jack Maloney. And what will the Warriors have to do following Steph Curry's gruesome hand injury? You're listening to Second Take on WFAN Radio, sponsored by T-Mobile.
The sports leader.